Fluttershy took a long, slow swig of her mug, relishing the sweet, crisp taste of the apple ale. Draining the mug in a swift gulp, she slammed the mug victoriously on her coaster and hiccuped, smiling and giggling, bubbly and warm. She licked the foam mustache off of her upper lip, unable to stop smiling as she gazed longingly across the table at her entourage, Rainbow Dash. She leaned her head on her hoof, twirling the mug around on its corner, blinking slowly. She felt the drink spreading through her bosom, filling her with a warmth and releasing her inhibitions.
Did I ever tell you that you look like a really sexy rain cloud?
She asked Rainbow Dash suddenly, feeling a drunken blush dust her face. Rainbow put down her simple soda and looked sternly at Fluttershy.
Every time you get drunk,
she replied flatly. Fluttershy giggled drunkenly at her friend's reply, leaning her head on her hoof and swaying slowly from side to side. She waved her other hoof airily.
You slay me,
she said, sighing and then giggling some more. Rainbow Dash rolled her eyes. Every time she brought Fluttershy out to drink, she ended up trying to flirt with her. The first time it had been surprising, and maybe acceptable, a little. But Fluttershy never remembered making such a fool of herself, and Rainbow never enlightened her on the subject. She knew her terribly shy friend would be kicking herself for years if Rainbow even mentioned a single one of the things she did drunk. Rainbow would have rather not had brought her, but she had to. It was a long story, and a lifetime deal Rainbow really tried hard to forget. But Fluttershy exploited the deal once or twice every other month, and Rainbow could never deny. It was part of the deal. Fluttershy twirled her mug around once more, finally losing grip and watching happily as it clattered down onto the table. She let out a long, awkward giggle at that, and finally sighed, turning back to her partner.
You never talk when we go out,
she pouted to Rainbow.
how would you know?
Rainbow asked.
You never remember any of this.
Fluttershy leaned her head to one side, then back to the other.
You're always talking, though.
Rainbow said nothing, only sipping her soda through a straw. It was true that she was refraining from conversation. She knew better from previous drinking nights. In an awkward attempt to be flirty, Fluttershy reached across the table and plucked the straw from her soda, putting it in her own mug and sucking through it, giving Rainbow a half-lidded stare the entire time. Rainbow Dash counted the seconds before Fluttershy realized she had already emptied her mug. 7. Fluttershy then pounded her hoof on the table as hard as she could, which wasn't very hard at all, and called out to No Pony in particular.
Refill here.
A short time later, her mug was topped off, and Fluttershy happily plunged the straw into it. Rainbow Dash reached over and pinched the straw, saying,
I think you've had enough.
Hey,
Fluttershy immediately argued, blinking heavily in an attempt to focus on Rainbow Dash.
hey.
She picked up the mug and shook it in front of Rainbow's face.
Do you see this? This here is alcohol. Alcohol.
She stressed drunkenly, finally putting the mug down on the table.
And when I drink it, my inhibitions vanish.
She blew her hooves apart to emphasize the vanishing of her inhibitions.
So, if I wanna flirt with you, then I'm gonna.
Fluttershy, please.
Rainbow sighed, resting her forehead on her hoof.
You're making a scene.
Oh no.
Fluttershy answered, wiggling her bottom out of her seat.
I'll show you a scene.
She stood up and planted her hooves on the table, wobbling slightly before calling out to the entire bar.
Hey, everybody. Hi.
She held up her mug.
Normally, I wouldn't be able to talk to any of you face to face, but this stuff,
She shook the beverage for emphasis.
this stuff lets me talk to all ya. And I want you all to know that this mare
She pointed at Rainbow Dash, seated across from her.
is ignoring my drunken advances on her.
Sounds like the smart thing to do. Some pony in the bar called out to her, eliciting chuckles from the crowd. Fluttershy scrunched up her face.
Rude.
She muttered, then took a long, slow swig from her mug, leaning back further and further until she lost her hoofing and fell backwards, screaming in delight as she felt Rainbow Dash catch her in her hooves. She looked up at the cyan mare and caressed her face with her hoof.
Hey there.
She greeted warmly.
How do you get back here so fast?
You'd be surprised how sneaky you can be when every pony is looking at the drunken chick.
Rainbow pointed out, eliciting even more drunken giggles from Fluttershy. She rolled her eyes and slung the drunken mare over her back, deciding that it was about time for her to leave. Fluttershy wrapped her hooves around Rainbow's neck, giggling as she felt Rainbow's shoulders and haunches move rhythmically beneath her. She gasped quietly and squeezed Rainbow tighter as she felt the cold outside air nip at her skin.
It's cold out here.
She observed.
You won't be out here long.
Rainbow assured.
I'm taking you home.
Aww.
Fluttershy pouted, entertaining herself with Rainbow Dash's mane. She felt herself being lulled to sleep by Rainbow's movements beneath her, but decided to instead take one more stab at flirting with Rainbow. She pulled herself closer to Rainbow's neck, brushing Rainbow's mane out of the way and leaning close to her ear.
Hey,
She whispered.
I'm going to start kissing your neck as a sign of my sexual availability. Except I don't know how to kiss, so it might just be me drunkenly slobbering on your fur.
And she moved her nose into Rainbow's neck, gently planting what she thought was a string of passionate kisses on her fur. But to Rainbow, it felt more like Fluttershy was just licking her like a dog. She tried to ignore it, but after a few moments found herself biting her lip involuntarily. She pushed Fluttershy back, much to her drunken dismay. Fluttershy weakly flailed her hooves out, whining drunkenly. Rainbow was glad that they had reached Fluttershy's home by now. She didn't know how much longer she could resist Fluttershy's uninhibited stupor. She walked up the steps and opened the door, making her way across the living room and up the stairs to Fluttershy's bedroom. Soon the night would be all over, and Rainbow could go home. She carefully peeled Fluttershy off her back and laid her down in bed, sighing when she saw Fluttershy curl up in the comforter on her bed, seemingly going right to sleep. She turned around and headed back across the room, all too ready to leave.
Oh.
Fluttershy suddenly called out in what she probably thought was a sultry voice.
I'm just a poor, helpless mare all alone in my big, empty house. I sure hope I don't get taken advantage of by any sexy rainbow mares who stumble upon me in my drunken stupor.
Rainbow turned around and saw Fluttershy laying down in bed, clearly trying to appear seductive. Back curved, eyes half closed, and focused on Rainbow Dash, a drunken blush spreading across her face, and a cute little smirk on her face. Rainbow's brow furrowed.
Good night, Fluttershy.
She asserted, turning back around. She stopped in the doorway when she heard Fluttershy sniffling behind her.
Don't turn around. Don't turn around.
She turned around and saw Fluttershy looking at the ground, chin trembling and hooves twiddling. Rainbow's eye twitched as she held back her emotions, but finally gave in and walked back over, giving Fluttershy a simple kiss on the forehead.
Good night, Fluttershy,
she said, gentler. Fluttershy giggled, lowered her eyelids, and finally went snoring away. Rainbow Dash sighed in relief, turning around to leave for the last time. As she walked out of the door, she stopped, peeked back into the room, saw Fluttershy snoring sweetly away in her bed, and flicked off her light switch, gently closing the door behind her.